So we're here in East Palestine, just across the street from the original Roadhouse, where President Trump is supposedly supposed to be arriving kind of any moment now. I'm here with Cullen. I guess, first off, what do you think of the former president's visit today?
I think it says a lot. Definitely shows that he cares. I don't think he's going to try to make it political. I hope he doesn't make it political and stray away from the real issue is that, this community we need help right now. Local businesses, so far, are the only ones I've seen passing out water and supplies, and no one else is really helping. So I think it says a lot about him.
So overall, you're happy that he's coming into town?
Absolutely, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you on, the response from government at all levels has been pretty poor at this point. The communication from them has been, all over the place. They're relying on the railroad for a lot of stuff. A couple residents I've been talking to, obviously, this is a very Trump town. Lots of people here support him. Some residents who are like, I voted for him twice, and they're kind of like, I feel like this kind of is a political stunt sort of thing. He's announced his run for president again. What is it that he can actually do right now? I guess, what do you predict from this visit? Do you think he's actually going to take the time to talk with folks like yourselves who are dealing with this sort of stuff, or is this going to be a quick in and out type of thing?
I think he will. I think he'll listen to people, especially the residents that are close to the derailment. I live probably about 1.5 miles away from the derailment. Yep. I'm more worried about the neighborhood that's right next to it, and I think he'll go there and talk to them and find out what are people's needs, what are people's concerns. Because a lot of answers aren't getting answered right now. We're asking, how long is this going to take, the cleanup, what are the long-term effects, especially to our water, to our the air, the soil, and I'm hoping him being here, being present here, will light a fire under some people, and we can get some stuff done.
Gotcha. I mean, I hope so as well. One thing that's a little tough, and then I want to just ask you kind of in general how this whole thing's been affecting you. Obviously, this whole incident has kind of highlighted that, if anything, we probably need to look at adding quite a few regulations to the railroads. Norfolk Southern absolutely should not be able to do a lot of the things that have kind of come to light after the situation. Correct. Whether it be 1.5-mile long trains, whether it be the way that the brakes are running, using systems that were developed during the Civil War for the braking technology. Under the Trump administration, when he was president beforehand, they actually cut back on some regulations. Yeah. I guess, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think, obviously, that some of these regulations need to be put in place moving forward?
Absolutely. And getting back to the political thing, whether, Republican, Democrat, across the board, it doesn't need to be a Republican. Standards need to be upheld. Everyone needs to upstand it. And I think as far as, the standards, that obviously someone messed up, and someone needs to own up to it. Regulations need to be looked at, policies need to be re-looked at, and needs to be addressed. Sure. So yeah, I do agree with you in his administration, Biden administration, anybody.
Right, the Biden administration has not put any of these back into place. Right. The Biden administration also squashed the railroad workers strike that was supposedly, that they tried to make happen earlier this year to try to get more regulations and safety concerns. So there are a whole bunch of people at play, and that person to blame is, before anybody else, is definitely Norfolk Southern in this case. Right. But there's a whole bunch of politicians and all sorts of other folks in their pockets that are, money is important here. The amount of trains rolling through since we've been in town is insane.
You have to look at the money too, who's backing Norfolk Southern. You're talking about, what was it, BlackRock,
JP Morgan.
Yeah, yep.
And it's horrible that it's all falling downhill, and it's all falling down on this community. We're already a small community. These people on the porch you see behind, we're very prideful about this community. My kids go to school here. I lived all over the country. I've been all over the world. I came back to this place particularly because I wanted to raise my kids here, and they had to go through COVID, and now they have to go through this. It's horrible. I just want to go back to normal, people to be upheld to what we think they should be doing right now. The standards. People need to be held accountable.
Not to mention, my family has been here for years. My father's lived here 63 years. All generations of family have lived here for years, and now we're worried about value depreciating in homes, and people are wanting to move out. And I have family members that are landlords now. Their tenants are moving out, And who's going to repay all that? Who's going to reimburse all that? You know, how's that going to work now too? So there's just more than an environmental issue. There's a lot to go with it, you know. And I think that just to kind of like pass it off as just a simple political issue when there's more to it than just that. And I think if you're seeing anything that is making it political, then I think we're overlooking the big factor of what the problem really is here, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's we've been talking to people nonstop for the last 3 or 4 days at this point now, and some of the decisions that people are having to make right now are impossible to make. Yeah,
they shouldn't be put in that position.
No, I mean, you're talking single moms who have kids who are getting sick, who don't have the money to pick up and leave. They've got a job here, and they're trying to balance, do I move out of here? I can't sell my home if they own their home. They're stuck in a lease, and it's like, do I move out and go broke somewhere? Or do I stay here and risk, you know, my family's health and well-being? It's an impossible situation. Yeah. I mean, yeah, have any of you here kind of experienced any symptoms or have children who've been experiencing any symptoms after all this happened? Or
thank God, no.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it doesn't. Yeah, knock on wood. I don't know about these guys.
My wife has had a headache for 5 straight days.
Sinuses.
You know, the thing with it is I know that I know kids that do have rashes on them and stuff like that, but if you go to a doctor and it's like, well, how can we prove that that's what's this from? And that's so where the issue lies is it's where it's like, whether we know or we don't, whether you could prove it or you can't prove it, what's this all about then? Why are we all here? Why is this going on? So it's like that we wouldn't have this. We would know directly it wouldn't be a result of this if this wasn't the case. Right. So like, you know, it becomes confusing, and then it always reverts back on something political, you know, rather than just worrying about someone's health or worrying about what's going on.
Don't forget about the politics. Like, make it right for all y'all who live here and fix it.
None of that should matter. It shouldn't matter which side of the fence you're on. We're all people.
Or whether or not that, you know, the fact that we would even have to worry about health concerns to begin with.
Sure.
You know, like if you're, you know, they say the water's fine, they say it's all good, but then you're like, when you wake up in the morning, you got to brush your teeth or you got to take a water. I mean, how many times have you walked by the sink and stuck your head under the sink and took a sip of water out of the sink? You don't do that now. You don't do those, you know, those habits that you have that you kind of are more cautious now about whether or not you want to drink. And that shouldn't be the case regardless, is all I'm saying, you know?
Yeah.
And what's tough too, I mean, yesterday we went out to the clinic that the state of Ohio set up for folks. I actually ran into Governor DeWine myself yesterday and asked him some tough questions that he was not happy about hearing. And he said, you know what, these people who are experiencing these symptoms should go to the health clinic. So we went to the health clinic, and the health clinic is not offering any actual medical services there. They're offering you people to go talk to then get, you know, oh, now you go see your doctor. So if you don't have good health insurance or health insurance at all, you're footing the bill for an ER visit, a doctor visit, all this sort of stuff. And yet the governor is telling people, go to the clinic, go to the clinic, go to the clinic. You can't even get tested for anything at the clinic. And then we heard reports from residents yesterday who went to the clinic, and the clinic is telling people, oh, you've got rashes. It's because of stress.
Right.
So half the town is getting freaking rashes because of the stress.
I heard poison ivy too is another thing. Oh, you have poison ivy, or you have poison oak, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, COVID caused a lot of stress too. So where was the rashes then?
Yeah.
You know, I mean so that's right. You know,
yeah, they're gaslighting people, trying to take advantage of the situation, being like, oh, these people aren't going to be able to figure out. It's ridiculous, and I mean,
yeah, no, and just to say too. And I heard you mention, you know, the Trump policy in 2018 with the railroad, and I do think that should have been addressed. But also, that being said, either side could have fixed this.
Biden still hasn't fixed it.
Yeah, and they had the House, they had the Senate. He vetoed a lot of his stuff day one, so maybe this should have been just on both sides of it. So.
Absolutely. I mean, politicians on both sides of the aisle for years have been all wrong on this, and it's. Again, it all comes back to the money. It all comes back to the money.
Some of these other countries' railroads, I mean, and how sophisticated they are now, and just, you know, it's amazing to see that this is the best we can do just across the whole country. You know, this is the best.
Let's fix it. Just stop pointing the finger, the back and forth and stuff like that. Let's just fix it. We're a small community. We need to get back to normal. If this community is going to survive, we have to get back to normal. It needs to get fixed immediately.
And attention needs to be brought to it. So that's the whole point. You know, we got this banner up here thanking Donald for coming in, and it's not about thanking like a Republican side or you know, or a Democrat, whatever it may be politically, but it's about this guy. He's shown up. and he's bringing attention to it. And you know, since he's even announced being coming here,
people have joined.
now we have, you know, there's people joining in. Now we have more light on the situation, and it's not just like, you know, this what was before a TikTok social media kind of trendy thing to do. It's become more of a serious, I guess, understood issue, and not just like a trendy
and just
thing.
to say this too, you know, just looking back, I wonder, with all the information we have available to us now about this controlled burn, if they could go back and relook, and all the information they have right now at this moment, if they could just go back and relook, would they make that same decision to do the controlled burn? Because it just felt like they were doing that just so they could get those tracks up and running, and that's all they cared about. And that says a lot right there.
It's understandable when you get in a position as well where you're like, well, we have to make a decision right now. You got to make a quick decision. So it's like, you know, you don't want to be like, you don't want to jump on someone about if they did a bad job or not when they're trying to help. So that's understandable. I don't think that that's what you were saying at all either. That's what to clarify that.
I also think too, though, with that,
You know, those, you know, I mean, and who knows? They stood out there for a while breathing that stuff in and not knowing, and we were driving around town that night and breathing it in, and you know, but we just didn't know what exactly was happening. You know?
the people most responsible in that situation right there, though, the fact that all the local first responders showed up to that, Norfolk Southern knows what's on their train, or at least they should know what's on their train. They should have been able to say in freaking minutes, hey, your equipment that you have right now is not good for this. Hey, don't pour water on this because water is going to make it worse right off the bat. And shame on them for
3 days for some of those chemicals. That's hard to believe that you don't have a manifest of all that stuff. That's you know exactly what you're carrying.
And not to mention, too, again, there was way too much reliance on Norfolk Southern in the beginning on this, where it's like, you know, the government is relying on information from the railroad that caused the problem that has every incentive in the world to get the railroad back open again immediately.
Cheapest independent contracting that you could afford in order to get something solved as quickly as you can to get your railroads back on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just that's the facts. That's what happened.
And you know, you see a lot of stuff on, like, you know, social media, stuff like that. People, oh, the water is fine. Nobody's talking about the city water. We know people that work for the city water. The city water is okay for now. We don't know long term, but it's water. It's the creeks. It's the ponds. It's, you know, wells. Crops, wells. I mean, there's just so much unknown.
Yeah,
you know, and you're getting reports of people with dead fish all the way down in Kentucky. I mean, this has traveled big. It is about East Palestine, but it's also bigger than that too.
Absolutely. If there's anything else you guys want to share about what's going on here that you don't think is getting out there, is there anything you guys can think of?
At the end of the day, everything's about unity. We got to be united here and among and abroad. It doesn't matter if you're Darlington, Enon Valley. Like, we got to band together and do this as a unit.
It's our home.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.